And as you know, we made our deal with the European Union. The Japan deal is done. Many of the other deals are done. Indonesia was a very big deal, big country actually. And they're wonderful, and hopefully wonderful for both sides. But it's literally trillions of dollars ultimately being brought into our country. And it was something that had to be done, and it is being done, and it's being done properly. We're now negotiating with various other countries, and the rest we're just sending out the bill to. We send a bill, we send a letter saying that you'll pay a certain tariff. And obviously, that's most of them because you have, as you know, hundreds of countries, a lot of countries out there. So we look at the deficit, or we look at the surplus, and we look at the country and how the country's treated us, and lots of other things go into the equation. And we make a decision as to what that tariff will be, and it's a pretty standard letter from that point on. And I want to tell you, this is something, to me, it's a VA bill signing, and it's very important to me and to many of the people in this room. So I'm thrilled to sign the VA Home Loan Program Reform Act into law, and that is something that they've wanted to do for a long time. This legislation provides desperately needed relief to veterans and their families who have fallen behind on their mortgages, of which there are a lot, because we have somebody that doesn't want to lower interest rates and probably won't lower them today. It's a really sort of an amazing situation. And it helps keep our promise to end veterans' homelessness, and we're going to do that for America. We're going to do that for our great veterans. I'm thrilled to be joined by the bill's sponsor, Congressman Derek Van Orden. Where is Derek?
Right here.
Derek? Hello, Derek. I didn't see you back there.
Well, I'm a Navy SEAL. Snuck out.
Let's see. And Mike, how are you, Mike?
Mr. President.
These two gentlemen are terrific. They are working together, and they've been working together, Mike, a long time on this. So I just want to thank you both, and I'll ask you to say a couple of words. An estimated 61,000 American veterans are in danger of losing their homes, as you know. But thanks to this bill, the Department of Veterans Affairs will be empowered to pay loan holders the necessary amount to prevent foreclosures on our veterans, so our veterans won't be foreclosed and put out onto the streets. It's very important. This bill also creates a 5-year partial claim program that could benefit up to 3.7 million veterans. That's the kind of numbers you're talking about. It's big stuff. The costs of the program are fully offset and will add nothing at all to debt. This common sense legislation had overwhelming support and passed unanimously in the House and the Senate. Wow. When was the last time that happened? That's pretty impressive. My administration is committed to doing everything possible to ensure that our veterans are treated with respect and treated as well as anybody in this country. They're so important. They're so great. They've suffered so much in many cases. In May, I signed an executive order to open the National Center for Warrior Independence in Los Angeles, California, which will house up to 6,000 homeless veterans. You know, until we came along, they treated the veterans far worse than the illegal immigrants. They came in, they were staying in hotels, luxury hotels, and the veterans are staying outside of the sidewalk on the same hotel. Some pictures are just incredible. In addition, we'll also be opening a full-service VA center in New Hampshire, which is the only state in the union to not have a VA center. And I made that promise to the people of New Hampshire a long while ago, and we got it done. It's the only state that doesn't have, and yet you have a lot of veterans in New Hampshire. We're slashing the wait times at VA medical centers, and we're bringing back VA choice and VA accountability, which I had and the Democrats abandoned. It made it so much better. Accountability, meaning if you treat our veterans badly, we treat you badly. You get fired and beyond that. And VA choice is you can get out and you can, if you don't have a doctor ready, willing, and able to take care of you within the VA, you go outside, you go see a doctor, you get better, and we pay the bill. And the veterans loved it. We had a 92% approval rating. And what did the Democrats do? They came along and they ended both of them, and they hired back many of the people that we fired. We fired people and replaced them with great, loving people. But we fired people who were sadists. In many cases, they were sick. They were thieves. They were stealing. And they hired them back. The accountability, meaning the VA accountability, it was a big deal getting it passed because you have unions, you have all sorts of problems to go through. We got it through everything. And the Democrats, as soon as they got back, they hired many of the worst people right back, and we're getting rid of them. But I want to thank the two gentlemen standing behind me, and I'd like to ask you just to say a couple of words, and then we'll take a few questions if you'd like, and we'll sign the bill, and our veterans will be very happy about it. Thank you. Mike, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you, Mr. President, for signing this bill today. Let me tell you that not only this bill, which will help make sure that those veterans have got themselves in a situation where maybe they would be foreclosed on, it gives them just a little bit extra help without the government going into a banking business like what we had with the previous administration. I also want to say thank you, too, though, for appointing Doug Collins as our secretary for the VA. As chairman of the VA, having the opportunity to work with Doug, one, because we worked together before, but he has the right attitude, and the attitude is the VA is not about bureaucracy. It's about the veterans, and we want to keep it that way. That doesn't mean we don't have a good workforce. What it means is that workforce is focused on the veterans, not on making sure that the VA grows, but making sure that the VA does the job it's supposed to do. And thank you, Mr. President. It's your leadership that allows that to happen.
Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. Thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us here. I'm the longest-serving enlisted member of the United States military to ever get elected to Congress in the history of our nation. And I'm unequivocally stating right now that President Donald J. Trump is the most positive, pro-veteran president in the history of this country. And so he backs up his words with deeds, and this is another example of how President Trump is taking care of our veterans. So, sir, I'm very thankful for you, for your leadership, and let's get this thing done and get our veterans into homes. So God bless you, and God bless the United States.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Let's sign first, and we'll take a couple of questions. Yes. I'll get it done. We've been waiting a long time. And I do want to commend Doug Collins because I hear he's doing
a fantastic job.
He's done an incredible job. Okay. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
No auto pen? It's a very important bill, and we want to thank everybody for the great help, and in particular, you two guys have done a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Okay, take a pen.
I'll keep that one.
Take a pen. Take another pen. And we'll take them and give them to the other people to help. Okay?
Very well.
Okay, questions?
Mr. President, you said that higher interest rates are making it harder for veterans to refinance. There's a stronger than expected GDP report this morning. What do you say to analysts who worry that lowering interest rates would actually lead to inflation?
Well, if that happens, then we just raise them. What you do is you lower them, and let's see if there's inflation. Right now, there's no inflation. Everybody thought there would be. All we have is billions of dollars of cash pouring into our country from other countries that took advantage of us for many, many years. You know, they were taken advantage of. We were like the stupid people that didn't know what they were doing. They took advantage of us. Other countries, friend and foe. And by the way, the friend was oftentimes much worse than the foe when it comes to trade. So if that happens, what you do is you raise your rates and you do what you have to do to stop inflation. But we're keeping the rates high, and it's hurting people from buying houses, and we don't want that. If for any reason that happened in a year or two, if there's some signs of inflation coming back, right now there's not. We have a great thing going. I think we're going to have the richest economy you've ever seen. We have money coming in that we've never even thought about at numbers that nobody's ever seen before. We have a deal with Japan where they're going to pay us $550 billion. We have a deal with Europe where they're doing $750 billion plus $400 billion plus $300 billion. And many other countries, it's likewise, you know, relatively, those are two big ones. But likewise. So we have a lot of money coming in, and we have no inflation, and we're very strong, and we should be lowering the rates. You know, each point that this gentleman keeps up costs us $365 billion a year. Think of that. 1 point, $365 billion. If you bring it down a point, we save 365. We should be the lowest interest rate, and we're not. We're 38, number 38, because of the Fed. It's all because of the Fed. He's done a bad job. Now, he's got a meeting today, but I call him too late. You know, he's always too late. Even if he does it today, probably won't. I hear they're going to do it in September, not today. For what reason? Nobody knows. But Europe, as you know, cut their rates 11 times in the last short period of time. But the good news is we're doing better than anybody anywhere in the world. Nobody's doing anything even close to us, even with the higher rates. The higher rates do affect housing, though, because people can't go out and get a loan or refinance their house. And it would be nice to have them be able to do that. That would be just another check of a box. That would be very important. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, you mentioned today that India, in addition to its 25% tariff rate, would pay an additional penalty because of its support of Russia. What is that additional penalty? And are other countries facing the same threat?
Well, we're negotiating right now, and it's also BRICS. You know, they have BRICS, which is basically a group of countries that are anti the United States, and India is a member of that, if you can believe it. It's an attack on the dollar, and we're not going to let anybody attack the dollar. So it's partially BRICS, and it's partially the trade, this trade situation. It's the deficit. We had a tremendous deficit. So, as you know, Prime Minister Modi is a friend of mine, but they don't do very much business in terms of business with us. They sell a lot to us, but we don't buy from them. You know why? Because the tariff is so high. They have one of the highest tariffs in the world. Now they're willing to cut it very substantially, but we'll see what happens. We're talking to India now. We'll see what happens. It doesn't matter too much whether we have a deal or whether we charge them a certain tariff, but you'll know at the end of this week. August 1st is a very big day for this country because money is going to pour into the United States like we've never seen before. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hawley introduced legislation that would ban members of Congress from owning or trading individual stocks. It extends to the president and vice president. Are you in favor of that legislation?
Well, I like it conceptually. I don't know about it, but I like it conceptually. And, you know, Nancy Pelosi became rich by having inside information. She made a fortune with her husband, and I think that's disgraceful. So in that sense, I'd like it, but I'd have to really see I study these things very carefully, and this just happened. So I'll take a look at it. But conceptually, I like it. And what I do think is Nancy Pelosi should be investigated because she has the highest return of anybody practically in the history of Wall Street, save a few. How did that happen? It happened by she knows exactly what's going to happen, what's going to be announced. She buys stock, and then the stock goes up after the announcement's made. And she ought to be investigated.
Mr. President, Harvard is reportedly willing to settle with you for $500 million. Is that enough?
Well, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. We're negotiating with Harvard now. They would like to settle, so we'll see what happens.
Mr.
What is America's debt to our Afghan war allies that kept our veterans safe over there? There's been some talk about sending a lot of them back. Would you let your administration do that?
We know the good ones, and we know the ones that maybe aren't so good. You know, some came over that aren't so good. And we're going to take care of those people, the ones that did a job, the ones that were told certain things. A shame what happened. One of the most disgraceful episodes in the history of our country. The way we left Afghanistan was just a disgrace. But I understand your question fully, and we'll take care of 90% of your question, okay? I know what you mean. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, on the tariffs on India, are you still open to negotiate with India on the tariff front?
Well, we're talking to them now. We'll see what happens. Again, India was the highest or just about the highest tariff nation in the world. And one of the highest, 100 points, 150 points or percentages. So India was one of the highest in the world. They had won 175%, and higher than that. You know, who's another higher one is Canada. They've been charging our farmers 200%, 300%, 400% for years, and nobody did anything about it. But India is one of the highest, so we're going to see. We're negotiating with India right now.
Kash Patel reportedly found burn bags of Russiagate materials, and we'd love to get your thoughts on that.
He said what?
Burn bags of Russiagate materials that
don't know
FBI
that.
supposedly found.
I don't know that. I don't know what you mean by that statement. Say,
Bags full of Russiagate
oh,
documents.
Bird Bag. I thought you said appointed a man named Bird Bag. Go ahead. You got to speak up.
Thousands of documents in these bags, supposedly burn bags at the FBI in the secret room.
Well, I want everything to be shown. You know, as long as it's fair and reasonable, I think it will be shown and it should be shown. And I think he feels that way, and I think Pam feels that way. But it's got to be, it's got to be stuff that really doesn't hurt people unfairly, because you have so many people involved. And if they can do that in a fair way, I think it's great. I think it's really great. The whole thing is a scam. It's a scam set up by the Democrats, and they love talking about it. But I would like to see people exposed that might be bad, and we'll see how that all works out. But it's getting to be very old news. You know, if they had anything, they would have done it the week before the election, because they were losing by a lot. If they had anything, they would have done it. They controlled the file. The Democrats controlled it. Comey and all this, sleazebags, every one of them that you read about all the time. And I guess they've got some problems now having to do with yet a different scandal, very big one. But they control that file. So I would think that if they would have had something in the file, they would have released it about a week before the election, maybe 2 weeks, right, Brian? That's right. Go ahead.
Mr. President, welcome home, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
It was a great trip. It was an amazing trip.
Look good.
For the country. For me, it was okay, but for the country, it was an amazing trip. Go ahead.
It was. Many parents are preparing to send their kids back to school in a few weeks. Now, this will be the first time they've gone back to school under the second administration for you. Now, the previous administration labeled a lot of parents domestic terrorists for showing up to school board meetings. What's your message to parents now as they return their kids to school, knowing that they have the support of you?
Well, the beautiful thing is, as you know, we've gotten rid of the woke. Woke is gone, and I think pretty well buried. We're going to make sure it's buried. But the parents are now taking over the school boards. They're getting rid of these people that probably didn't like the children very much based on what they were doing. And it's a big difference. And, one of the other things, and I keep watching these talking points that the Democrats have, they say, oh, prices are up. No, prices are way down. Fuel is down. Groceries are down. Things like eggs are way down. When I came in my first week, the eggs had gone up like 4 or 5 times. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. And they were hitting me about eggs. I said, I just got here. It was one of my first maybe my first news conference. And we have eggs down now to a point where they were actually lower than even before. So I just want everyone to know prices are way down. And that's a big thing. Groceries, everything. If you look at fuel, $2.35 a gallon, a lot of that. But we actually had 4 states where it's down $1.99, $1.99 as opposed to $3.50, $4. And it went up a lot higher than that. They got rid of my policy, and then it went through the roof. And then they brought my policy back, but it was too late. They blew it. We had the highest inflation in the history of our country. And now we have no inflation. We have nothing but cash coming in. The world respects us again. We're a really great, proud country. And I say it, I'll say it again, many, many leaders of other countries, I'm dealing with a lot of them today on their tariff situation. They owe us a lot of money. But many countries said to me, and almost in the same words, you were a dead country 1 year ago, and today you're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We are the hottest country right now anywhere in the world, and that's why we're taking care of our veterans. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
China. Mr. President, on China, the Secretary of Defense briefed you today.
Thank you guys, press.
We're moving along with China. We're doing fine with China. I think it's going to work out very well. We're right in step. I think we're going to have a very fair deal with China. Thank you.
Mr. President, what did you think Epstein was stealing those women for?
Thank you, press.
The President of the United States.
and we have a lot of great people here, and we've been looking forward to this day, but we sort of look forward to every day because we have a lot of surprises, most of which are good. Today you saw GDP was much higher than anticipated, and Scott, good job. Scott Bessent's been working, just got back from a little excursion and a meeting with China in Europe, and that went well. We've done very well with the EU deal. It's a very big deal, I guess. They say the biggest trade deal ever made by far, probably is. Just completed Japan and many other countries, and hundreds of billions of dollars is flowing into our country. We've never seen anything even close. And that's not me saying it, that's everybody saying it. And it's going to be something really, really very special. Maybe even more importantly, factories for AI and for cars and for lots of other things are being built in this country or planned to be built very shortly. They'll be starting. And where they need great amounts of energy, like for AI, they're going to be, I've given them approval. And Lee Zeldin has given them very fast approval to build their own electric powering plants, and they'll build them with the factory, so we don't have to worry about an ancient grid and all of the other problems, the obstacles people thought we were going to have that would make it impossible. And we're leading AI by a lot, and I think people are very impressed with our country. As they said, the King of Saudi Arabia and various leaders, and just about every leader I can even imagine. We were in the Middle East and Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia. They said, 1 year ago, your country was dead, and today you have the hottest country anywhere in the world, and that's true. So I congratulate everybody in the room that's helped, but we're doing a good job together. I'd like to begin by saying a few words about the unbelievable kind of numbers that we've been putting up. And as I said, the number of 3%, the pace in the second quarter, we smashed all expectations. They thought it would be maybe a little bit less than 2, and it was 3, a little bit more than 3. Consumer spending is up, business investment is way up, domestic manufacturing is way up, real disposable family income is up, and personal savings are up. Other than that, we're not doing so great. We have the hottest country, and I'll tell you, it's a great, we're having a lot of fun with it. At the same time, we dramatically slashed government spending for the second quarter in a row, down nearly 4%, which people were surprised at. We do a lot of cutting also. The private sector has boomed with nearly 600,000 jobs added, way above expectations, while we have reduced the federal workforce by 70,000 jobs. So these are private jobs that are coming back to our country. Federal jobs are being cut. Critics said that our tariffs would hurt the economy, but the data shows the exact opposite, and the exact opposite is happening. The U.S. Treasury has taken in $150 billion from tariffs, and we'll be adding about $200 billion next month for totals that nobody's ever seen before, frankly. And foreign imports were down 30% in the second quarter, while the domestic auto production surged by a stunning 36%. How about that number, Dr. Oz? Right? That's good. That's good. We want to do that with your patients, too. We'll have a very healthy. We're going to have a very healthy country. At the same time, inflation continues to fall faster than expectations, and for the 5th consecutive month, core inflation was lower than predicted substantially. This is truly the dawn of the golden age of America. That's what we're in. We want to keep it that way. This afternoon, we're gathered to announce another historic victory for the American people, a very important one. Today, the dream of easily transportable electronic medical records finally becomes a reality. I want to thank Secretary Scott Bessent, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for joining us, as well as Administrator of the Centers for Medicine and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, all friends of mine. White House AI and crypto czar David Sachs, and acting administrator of Doge Amy Gleason, all here. And we have various great senators here. Senator Round, Senator Cassidy, thank you very much for being here and helping out. I also want to thank representatives from Apple, Google, Samsung, Amazon, OpenAI, Anthropic, Epic, Oracle, Athena, Health, Noom, and that's not a bad group of people. Wow. And they're the top people. We don't play games. You know, when you invite people to the White House, the top ones doing. That's a big net worth sitting in this room right now. Boy, oh boy, we better make sure the room is nice and safe. There's half the net worth of our country. I'm also grateful to be joined by many numerous congressmen. I'm not going to name you if you don't mind. I'll probably never get their vote again, but it's too many. Thank you very much for being here. The Congress has been great. Senators have been great, and the congressmen and women have been great. We just passed the most important, I think, look, I can't say most important, but certainly one of the most, but the most consequential and the largest bill in the history of Congress. And I call it the great, big, beautiful bill. We call it different names, but it all means the same thing. For decades, America's healthcare networks have been overdue for a high-tech upgrade, and that's what we're doing. The existing systems are often slow, costly, and incompatible with one another. But with today's announcement, we take a major step to bring healthcare into the digital age, something that is absolutely vital. You got to do it. Moving from clipboards and fax machines into a new era of convenience, profitability, and speed, and frankly, better health for people. Under the leadership of Administrator Oz, we're officially launching the CMS Digital Health Tech Ecosystem to give healthcare providers, insurers, and software companies the tools they need to empower Americans with a 21st century experience on health. The key breakthrough we've made is getting many of the biggest names in the healthcare and technology to agree to industry-wide standards for electronic medical records. All of those great companies that you just heard have gotten together with this group of very brilliant people. I don't know who's more brilliant, them or them. I don't know. Could be them. I hate to tell you. It could very well be them. But I don't know. I'm going to take my team. But the key breakthrough we've made is getting many of the biggest names in healthcare and technology to agree to that those standards of electronic medical records that we talk about and you've heard about for so many years, and now it's happening. This will allow patients to easily transmit information from one doctor to another, even if they're different networks and using different record-keeping systems. No matter what system they use, they're all transferable. The new standards will also make it simple for patients to access their own personal health records. I don't want to see mine, please. I don't want to see. I don't know about you. They have all sorts of things. Sir, they can tell you exactly what your problem is going to be in 6 years. We can do it. You know, they have all these different things. I don't know if they work or not, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it. If they got a problem, I don't want to know about it right now. But it is amazing what they're doing. I don't know, does it actually work? Can they do that? All right, well then I'm glad I said I don't want to know. But thanks to this announcement, healthcare providers across the country will also finally be able to kill the clipboard. It's an expression that's used, capital, with a capital C, kill the clipboard. Instead of filling out the same tedious paperwork at every medical appointment, patients will simply be able to grant their doctors access to their records at the push of a button. Just a button and you're all set, and all the information the doctor needs will be immediately transmitted. The system will be entirely opt-in, and there will be no centralized government-run database, which everyone is always concerned about. I'm less concerned than anybody. I say whatever it is, but people are very, very concerned about the personal records. They want to keep them very quiet, and that's their choice. I think it's a great thing because it'll be absolutely quiet. Instead, doctors and patients will always remain in control. The benefits to millions of Americans will be enormous. We will save time, we will save money, and most importantly, we'll save lives. It's just going to make people live longer and be a lot healthier. I think that's really what you're looking to do. And now I'd like to ask Secretary Kennedy to say a few words, followed by David Sachs, Dr. Oz, and Amy Gleason. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I just want to begin by making a comment that is irrelevant to what we're gathered here today to talk about. But I've been coming to this building for 65 years, and I have to say that it's never looked better. I've spent some time in the Oval Office, which it really it's been transformed. And I was looking at a picture of the Oval Office the other day when I was there, when I was a kid with my uncle. And, you know, it was it's always extraordinary to go into that sacred space. But I have to say that it looked kind of drab in the pictures. And they're black and white pictures, but it looked drab. And it looks the opposite of drab today. And I think, I know all these portraits, I hope you get a chance to look at them when you go out there, that they were handpicked by the president. And many of them hijacked from other agencies that were trying to keep them. But I mean, you know, my uncle, my aunt, Jackie, who were deeply committed to design, to beauty, and who understood that it's important to have our public buildings be beautiful because it inspires us, it elevates the human spirit. It's one of the, it is a template, and it's an example, an exemplar for democracy, the releasing through freedoms of the creativity of the human spirit. And this building, of all buildings, should look beautiful. And under your stewardship, it looks extraordinary today. So thank you, Mr. President, for that. About 3 weeks ago, I met with the Indonesian health minister. And Indonesia today is regarded as the highest flourishing nation on earth. Since 1990, it has increased the lifespan of its women by 8 years, of its men by 9 years. There's no country that has a record like that. And there are two major innovations that allowed them to achieve that extraordinary outcome. And one of those was to disincentivize people from eating processed foods. You are paid not to eat processed foods, and you are penalized for eating processed foods. The other innovation that really transformed Indonesia was allowing people control of their individual health records. He showed me the app that they use that everybody in Indonesia has. And it shows your height, your weight, your blood type, your BMI, your cardiac markers, your diabetes markers, your cholesterol, and any kind of individualized treatments that you've had. So if you go to a doctor in another town, he doesn't do what we have to do here, which is to sit there with a clipboard and a fax machine in order to get your health records. It's available, and it allows them to give better treatment. It also allows you to make better choices over your life. And there's other apps like Yaka in Indonesia that allow you to choose good foods when you go to the grocery store. So you can turn your app on your phone and you can get full information of those foods. Well, now if you have your medical records, you can get personalized advice. And that app will also give you advice about a better alternative. So we're going to be able to, Dr. Oz and I met with the former Prime Minister Rudd of Australia just after the election during the transition phase. And he, after his retirement as Prime Minister, he ran a commission to reorganize the Australian health system, and they revolutionized it, and they vastly improved health in Australia. And he said the single thing that he did that was most important to that transformation was the transparency that occurs when people control their own health records. Because it gives people the choice over their own health decisions and over their own lives, and it gives them a sense of responsibility and allows them to measure the interventions if they change their diet, if they change their exercise. It can show you how many steps you took today. It can tell you if your glucose is spiking. And all of that information will now be available to American citizens. 60 years ago today, we passed Medicaid and Medicare in this country. And we have 60 CEOs in this room of these extraordinary companies, some of which the president just mentioned, that have all agreed voluntarily to start sharing information. President Trump, during his first term, passed the interoperability rule. And it was intended to do this for 20 years. The federal government has been trying to do this. Everybody recognizes it's absolutely critical innovation for us advancing the health of American citizens, to give them responsibility and to give them control over their own healthcare choices. And unfortunately, you ran out of time the last time around. President Trump gave us instructions that he wanted this to happen within 6 months. We barely made it under the wire thanks to Dr. Oz's leadership. And within 6 months, every American's going to be doing it thanks to the cooperation of the corporate leaders in this room. You know, about 3 months ago, I met with the food executives, and I asked them to voluntarily come forward and get rid of food dyes, of the 9 synthetic petroleum dyes. And this is something, again, the government, Democrats and Republicans have been trying to do for 20 years. And the industry came forward, and now 40% of the food industry in this country has taken the pledge to remove food dyes from all of their foods. That happened because of your leadership, Mr. President. A month ago, we got, after a lot of work by Chris Klump and Dr. Oz and a lot of other people in our agency, we got all the insurance executives to come together in our country and in our offices and agree to get rid of pre-authorization for 80% of the DSM codes. This is a voluntary agreement. 80% of the industry has now agreed to do that. So this is happening because of good leadership. President Trump, you've asked us to think big, you've inspired us to dream big, and you've enabled us to accomplish things that no other president has been able to do. So I want to thank you for your leadership, for allowing this to happen, and with your leadership, we're going to make America healthy again. Now I want to introduce my friend, my colleague, the crypto czar, the acting administrator of Doge, David Sachs.
Thank you, Secretary Kennedy. I recently got a text message from a friend whose wife has been suffering from a chronic illness for something like a decade, and they've been trying to figure out what it is. They've never been able to figure it out. And I just want to read this to you right off my phone. He said, I uploaded my wife's blood work into one of our leading AI engines on Friday. It essentially diagnosed her as having a rare genetic defect that causes bone marrow failure. It's caused every single thing that's happened to her. She has every single symptom. It started at exactly the same age of presentation. It's 10 people out of 1 million. There's absolutely no way this is not it. So wow, it's really an incredible example of what AI is already able to do just today, and we're just getting started. And this was one person putting his wife's data in one of our consumer AI apps, and he's already been able to get that diagnosis, and that's going to help them tremendously. The key is the unlocking of the data, because the more data that AI has, the better it performs. And so, kudos to Dr. Oz and Secretary Kennedy for this pledge today. They were able to get 60 major companies across different sectors of the economy to agree to unlock their data so that AI can use it to drive better patient outcomes. And this is, all due to your leadership and President Trump's leadership to put the American people's healthcare needs first. And I remember Dr. Oz, he was one of the first people to call me during the transition when the president announced I'd be AI czar, because he wanted to ask me about how AI could better be used in healthcare. So kudos to you, Dr. Oz. Your passion's really incredible. And kudos to you, Secretary Kennedy, your passion as well. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was a big fan of Bobby Kennedy when he was running as a Democrat. And I remember thinking...
He gave a lot more money to President Trump.
Well, I remember thinking there's this one problem with Bobby Kennedy. He's not a Republican. But thanks to President Trump, I think we fixed that. So, and I think that, you know, getting people like Dr. Oz and Bobby Kennedy into the administration is a testament to President Trump and the talent that he's able to attract and pull together, and the partnerships that he's able to forge, because these are people who could be doing other things. So it's really a testament to the great talent that President Trump always attracts around him. Today's pledge by these companies is going to tear down barriers that allows both startups and established firms to compete freely. We're opening up the playing field so that the best tools can scale, compete on value, and discover new methods for making Americans healthy again. Technologies like AI, they do things like they will expand access to care, cut administrative costs, reduce fraud, and deliver better results for patients and doctors. And I want to thank you, President Trump, for your promise to not only make Americans healthy again, but also to ensure that America is the predominant AI superpower. Just last week, you announced a major AI action plan with hundreds of billions of dollars of new investment in AI infrastructure, and also getting red tape out of the way so that we can be the leading country in AI. And it's these life-saving applications that are going to be built on top of all of that infrastructure. So thank you for your leadership in making the United States the #1 country in AI. Thank you, sir.
David, thank you.
And now, Dr. Oz, we'll take it from here.
Mr. President, today we are making American health technology remarkably great again. We've always been at the leadership. David's right, I called him early on after the President offered me the position, and him as well, and we began brainstorming on this. Secretary Kennedy from day one appreciated the crisis that we're in and how we needed to address it. So today is a remarkably important day, one that you will remember, I believe, for years to come, for 3 reasons. Yes, it is the 60th birthday of Medicare and Medicaid. The first patient, by the way, was Harry S. Truman. Although Lyndon Johnson signed the legislation 60 years ago today, not far from here. It is not just the ability to bring 60 of the top incumbents and insurgents in health technology, hospital systems, insurance companies, electronic medical record companies, AI companies, the big players. You're all here, and we appreciate that very much. But, Mr. President, you used the power to convene. That's fundamentally what I think the President has been able to offer us. And Secretary Kennedy offered us, as a group, some examples, but there are more to come. And I want to touch on some of these. But first, I've got to do what doctors often have to do, which is to tell you the truth, even if you don't want to hear it. So here goes. These beautiful programs, which are the backbone of the social network, the social support system of this country, the safety net, they're flailing. They're flailing for a bunch of reasons. Medicaid is a unique entity. It has deviated from its original purpose by drift and by design. The One Big Beautiful Bill, the OB3 law, was elegant for that very reason. And President, I don't know if you remember this, I can share this, but he called me once and he was upset at me because I was going too strident at something. And he said, this is about fraud, waste, and abuse. That's what we're interested in doing. And that's exactly what the One Big Beautiful Bill accomplished. And it especially did it to save Medicaid by putting $200 billion more into it and allocating funds very specifically to use to support rural America. And primarily, some of that money will be used to support digital infrastructure, which is terribly lacking in many parts of the country. The money that's sent from Washington doesn't get to rural America. About 7% of Medicaid dollars get to rural hospitals. We now have an ability to infuse funds through this $50 billion Rural Health Transformation Fund into that system. The gathering today is another example of how we can actually jumpstart that and accelerate it. The other reality is COVID broke the system. It did for many reasons. Medicaid expenses went up 50% in 5 years. Medicare, the trust fund that we met at actually Treasury with Secretary Bessent and Secretary Kennedy as trustees, it goes bankrupt in 2033. And that is actually a conservative estimate. It could go bankrupt as early as 2029. Thankfully, due to the economy, that's not going to happen. But we don't want to have to take that risk, and there's some fundamental changes we need to make accordingly. Now, there's one other big reality about making the system more efficient, which is why what everyone here is talking about is so critical. And let's just pick an average American born in 1964. That average American born in 64 will retire this year at age 61. If just that one group of people born in 64 could work 3 years longer because they're healthy, because they feel like they want to do it, because they feel vital and vigorous and they're flourishing, just that 1 year working longer is $1 trillion to the U.S. GDP, and it's $300 billion of tax revenue to pay for a lot of the problems that people are concerned about. So it's not just keeping people out of the hospital, getting them to thrive and flourish that makes what we're doing so critical today. I think there are a lot of realities to how healthcare has gone. Unfortunately, the system is frozen, and it has been for many reasons, despite efforts in the first administration. It's frozen in time, so it cannot address the quality lags that exist. While Netflix and Airbnb and Uber drivers are racing ahead, making arrangements, identifying the problems that are challenging us in healthcare have become incredibly difficult. You can't make appointments. The average Americans are tired. They're tired of waiting for a doctor's appointment. They're tired of waiting for the surprise of what your hospital bill is going to offer. That's being addressed by one of the president's executive orders. They're tired of waiting for access to their medical records. You own your medical records. They're yours. Why you can't have access to them is a stunning reality in modern-day America. They're also tired of waiting for Washington to take action. And this president early on emphatically stated that wasn't going to happen anymore, and today we made that vision into a reality. And there's a fine line between vision and hallucination. What you did today was show it's a vision, because you share it with us, and we're moving ahead on it. And that's what today's commitments essentially are reflecting. And they are pledges. They're not laws. They're nimble, and they're fast, and they're quick, because the president understands that you, each of you in your own way, understand these needs. And Secretary Kennedy spoke beautifully about the reality of what happens when you actually have electronic records, because what he said is happening in Indonesia, we'll have here. Within a year, on your device, and 91% of Medicaid patients have smartphones. On this device, you'll get insights based on your records if you want. You don't have to take this, but if you desire, Amy Gleason is one of the smartest people I've ever worked with, has built a mechanism to be able to get you that information in a way with all these partners helping so that you can get nudged to pay attention to what you're eating and avoid processed foods that Secretary Kennedy smartly and wisely highlighted as so dangerous to our well-being. All this, by the way, is that will be at the fingertips. In addition, advice about which doctor to see, when to go see them, nudges, reminding you why I didn't do certain things. If you're a doctor like me, it's a very different story. It's to help you navigate the system better. It's giving you advice, decision support, which is becoming increasingly important as medicine gets more difficult. But I'll tell you the best thing of all, how many of you have been with your doctor telling them something heartfelt, very emotional, and they're looking to the side, typing into their computer, right? It's common. Put your hands up. I just want to see it. Yeah, most everybody. And that's unfortunate because the whole sacrament, the whole covenant of being with the doctor is having them look you in the eyes and realize you're there for each other. That process is going to go away. We will, within the workflow of doctors, be able, with your help, allow physicians to take care of patients, gather the information while they're doing it, and will destroy the upcoding that has hurt Medicare Advantage and other programs in a similar fashion. The IT infrastructure that's going to change promises to improve a lot of things. We're going to cut fraud, waste, and abuse. Mr. President, we announced with the DOJ 2 weeks ago a $15 billion bust. $15 billion, it's a multinational criminal syndicate based primarily, we believe, in the Soviet Union, in Russia. And what they did was hack using beneficiary numbers into the system. We'll be able to stop that because of a system that Amy has put together and the wonderful work of Amy Brandt, who has a fraud war room using this kind of technology, because we'll know who you are and who your doctor is so we can block this. We're going to have remarkable advances in how consumers can use their own records. We'll have beneficiaries be able to get MAGA advice and prevention tips and even be able to nudge them and reward them perhaps for that. And all this comes back to one fundamental issue, Mr. President, which is leadership. I think 60 people, the biggest, the best, the willing, came forward because of your leadership, because you weren't going to take no for an answer, and they know it. We are building a robust and safe, I emphasize that, safe system. It's going to protect the data better than we could have imagined. We're going to be able to accomplish goals that all of us wished from day one that would be in place. These pledges are now confirmed. They're signed in public. And you have therefore empowered Americans to own their property, which is their medical records. Let me introduce Amy Gleason. She is acting director of DOJ, U.S. Digital Service as well, and was actually the brilliant woman who pulled together the pieces of this puzzle with so many members of the audience. Amy Gleason.
Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank President Trump for his leadership in this area, and Secretary Kennedy and Administrator Oz for driving this work with clarity and urgency. I would also like to thank my colleagues who have been instrumental to this, and we've worked a lot of late nights and hard times on this, and it would not have been possible without them. I want to start today with my daughter Morgan, who's here in the audience. If you'd please stand up. I am so inspired and energized by your strength every day. And we also have two other patients here, Randy and Tom, who have been very inspiring. Thank you for being here today. You're why this all matters. Let me start talking about my daughter's history. So 15 years ago, she was diagnosed with a rare disease. She was 11 years old, and she started showing mysterious symptoms. Over the last year and a half after that, she saw the country's best doctors, but she still continued to get worse. At some point, she couldn't stand up off the floor or walk up the stairs, and we still had no answers. I carried a binder of paper records to every doctor's appointment so that I could keep them aligned. And I truly believe that if one of those doctors had been able to see her whole history, they would have diagnosed her faster. And if we had just had today's AI, then they could have connected the dots that the humans missed. Today, Morgan takes 21 pills a day, gets 2 infusions a month, and has over 40 patient portals. Her disease is very rare, but her experience, it's very common. And that is what we're here to fix today. Too many patients are forced to remember all the doctors that they've been to and log into portal after portal, repeating their story at every visit, and they don't have the digital tools to help them stay well. Meanwhile, every other part of our life is digital. I can order groceries and have them delivered in minutes. I get personalized recommendations on my other apps. But in healthcare, we still see it on paper and manual situations. But today, thanks to President Trump, we're changing that. Over 15 years, we've tried to regulate our way to a better outcome. And we have gotten a path forward, but they have not delivered the modern healthcare experience that Americans expect and deserve. I'm so proud today that these 60 companies have voluntarily stepped forward to make a pledge, to take action, and to join us, to say, we're ready, let's fix this, we're in. We're trying something different. It's not regulation or rulemaking. This is a voluntary alignment around a shared vision, a commitment to work across boundaries, across competitors, and across silos. We're bringing together data sharing networks, electronic medical records, doctors, health systems, payers, and app developers. And we're asking one simple question: what can we do right now to make this work for patients? The companies pledging today are agreeing to collaborate, even with their direct competitors, because they know we can't keep kicking the can down the road. We have to stop talking about data interoperability and make the data flow. Here's something important. Not all patients will want these tools. Some will rely on their caregivers, and others will rely on their doctors, so they don't have to carry it themselves. But no matter how people engage, we must make sure it works for everyone. CMS is doing its part. We're clearing the path for innovation by building the long overdue National Provider Directory, a kind of digital map for healthcare that connects systems in real time and helps patients get more coordinated care. We're also modernizing Medicare.gov to feel more seamless and smart like other apps we use. But the government can't do this and shouldn't do it alone. These tools we need to make daily decisions must come from the private sector, and that's why this is so important. So let me tell you what this might look like after our collaborative effort. So Morgan, in 6 months from now, might show up to her doctor's appointment, and instead of filling out a clipboard with her 21 medications, 12 doctors, and her entire medical history, she can just pull out her phone and tap or scan a QR code and seamlessly transfer her digital insurance card, her verified medical record, and a digital summary that could help her provider get up to speed faster. We call this kill the clipboard, as President Trump said. After the visit, Morgan opens her AI assistant, a tool that she has authorized to access her records, and asks, what did the doctor say today? What did these results mean? What should I watch for now? And the assistant responds using her actual health history, explains her care plan in plain language, helps her track her symptoms, and even schedules follow-up visits if she needs them. And lastly, she has a new favorite app that helps her manage her chronic conditions. Because for years, Morgan has said what other patients say: I only see a doctor a few days a year, but I live with this disease every day. Today, we're starting with apps that can support patients 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. They don't replace doctors. They just fill in the gap between visits so that care is continuous and not episodic. So what makes this effort different? Today we have all these apps that want to provide these services, but they can't get the data because it is so hard for patients to access their records. But today we have 18 network companies who are here pledging to fix the infrastructure that makes this possible. They're doing this through modern data sharing networks that removes the burden on patients and providers and makes it available in real time using modern identity, just like when you check in at the airport. These honor patient privacy and transparency, and most importantly, it's a movement to work together to remove the friction that's holding us back. Because access to information shouldn't be a luxury, it should be a standard. So for all the Morgans out there, come join this movement with us at cms.gov. Let's kill the clipboard and axe the facts. Let's help make health tech great again. Or in this case, maybe it's for the first time. Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you very much. That was great. Hello. You look very, very healthy to me. You look really great. So just, I want to thank all of the companies that are here. These are big names, great people. Now you're doing something that's so important for our country, really for the world. It's beyond our country, I suspect. It's really for the world. So just keep it up. And you've hit new highs almost virtually every day for the last few months. And that makes your job probably a little bit easier. You're under very little stress. But someday you might have a little bit, but you're not going to have much. I think we're really going to great heights. But I just want to thank everybody, political people and the teachers and the companies and all of our cabinet. I even see Newt. Do I see Newt? I see Newt. Look at him. He's such a handsome man. He's a healthy man. We don't have to do any tests on him. But good to see you, Newt. But I just want to thank everybody. This is a very big undertaking, and it's a very serious undertaking. It's going to make a lot of people lead a much better life. Thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I call you by MFN?
Yeah.
Can we start the...
Hi, I'm Ian, and I work for the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States. The Federal Reserve System consists of three main entities that perform key functions that serve the public and promote the health of our economy and the stability of our financial system. These key entities are the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, 12 Federal Reserve banks operating around our nation, and the Federal Open Market Committee. Based in Washington, D.C., the Board of Governors is the governing body of the Federal Reserve System. It's an agency of the federal government that reports to and is directly accountable to Congress. The board consists of 7 members, or governors, who are nominated by the President of the United States and confirmed by the Senate. Governors are appointed for 14-year terms. The Board of Governors oversees and sets policy direction for the system, including 12 Federal Reserve banks located around the country, which take the pulse of the nation's economic health from a regional perspective. The 12 reserve banks represent different geographic regions, or districts, and were set up based on regional economic considerations. Although supervised by the Federal Reserve Board, the reserve banks operate independently in many respects. The reserve banks carry out a number of core system functions, such as supervising and examining commercial banks and other financial institutions, enforcing compliance with federal consumer protection and fair lending laws, while promoting local community development and lending to depository institutions to ensure crucial liquidity in the financial system. They and the board also play a key role in another primary Fed function, fostering the safety and efficiency of our nation's payment systems, including distributing currency and coin to banks, operating electronic payment systems, and clearing our checks. In addition, the reserve banks act as the government's bank, providing services such as maintaining the Treasury Department's transaction account and issuing and redeeming U.S. government securities. They also act as a bank for banks by providing key financial services to banks, thrifts, and credit unions. The reserve banks also provide a wealth of information on conditions across the nation, information that is vital to formulating a national monetary policy that helps maintain a healthy U.S. economy and a stable financial system. The board and the reserve banks together help ensure that consumer and community voices are heard at the central bank through consumer-focused outreach, research, and analysis. This helps keep the Federal Reserve's actions, policies, and decision-making attuned to what's going on in American households, communities, and businesses, which are the foundation of our economy. The third key Fed entity is the Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, which brings together representatives from the board and the reserve banks to consider the state of the U.S. economy and set a course for our monetary policy in a manner that seeks to promote an economy that works for all Americans. The 12-member FOMC establishes an appropriate position or stance for monetary policy to help move the economy towards two essential mandates set for the Fed by Congress, promoting maximum employment and price stability. This occurs mainly through the FOMC's influence on interest rates and credit conditions, which can significantly impact financial conditions, including economic productivity and even spending and investment decisions by households, communities, and businesses. Working together, these three key Fed entities and the unique Federal Reserve System structure established by Congress more than a century ago help promote conditions resulting in a strong, healthy, and sustainable economy. For more information on how the Fed functions, visit federalreserve.gov and click on About the Fed.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. Despite elevated uncertainty, the economy is in a solid position. The unemployment rate remains low, and the labor market is at or near maximum employment. Inflation has been running somewhat above our 2% longer-run objective. In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged. We believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments. I will have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that growth of economic activity has moderated. GDP rose at a 1.2% pace in the first half of this year, down from 2.5% last year. Although the increase in the second quarter was stronger at 3%, focusing on the first half of the year helps smooth through the volatility in the quarterly figures related to the unusual swings in net exports. The moderation in growth largely reflects a slowdown in consumer spending. In contrast, business investment in equipment and intangibles picked up from last year's pace. Activity in the housing sector remains weak. In the labor market, conditions have remained solid. Payroll job gains averaged 150,000 per month over the past 3 months. The unemployment rate at 4.1% remains low and has stayed in a narrow range over the past year. Wage growth has continued to moderate while still outpacing inflation. Overall, a wide set of indicators suggests that conditions in the labor market are broadly in balance and consistent with maximum employment. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index and other data indicate that total PCE prices rose 2.5% over the 12 months ending in June, and that, excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 2.7%. These readings are little changed from the beginning of the year, although the underlying composition of price changes has shifted. Services inflation has continued to ease, while increased tariffs are pushing up prices in some categories of goods. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have moved up on balance over the course of this year on news about tariffs, as reflected in both market-based and survey-based measures. Beyond the next year or so, however, most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 4.25% to 4.5%, and to continue reducing the size of our balance sheet. We will continue to determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. Changes to government policies continue to evolve, and their effects on the economy remain uncertain. Higher tariffs have begun to show through more clearly to prices of some goods, but their overall effects on economic activity and inflation remain to be seen. A reasonable base case is that the effects on inflation could be short-lived, reflecting a one-time shift in the price level. But it is also possible that the inflationary effects could instead be more persistent, and that is a risk to be assessed and managed. Our obligation is to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored and to prevent a one-time increase in the price level from becoming an ongoing inflation problem. For the time being, we're well positioned to learn more about the likely course of the economy and the evolving balance of risks before adjusting our policy stance. We see our current policy stance as appropriate to guard against inflation risks. We're also attentive to risks on the employment side of our mandate. In coming months, we will receive a good amount of data that will help inform our assessment of the balance of risks and the appropriate setting of the federal funds rate. At this meeting, the committee continued its discussions as part of our 5-year review of our monetary policy framework. We focused on potential revisions to our statement on longer-run goals and monetary policy strategy, and are on track to wrap up any modifications by late summer. The Fed has been assigned 2 goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Chair Powell. There's a lot of lean in the markets, and not to mention out of the administration for a rate cut now in September. Is that expectation unrealistic at this point?
So, as you know, today we decided to leave our policy rate where it's been, where I would characterize as modestly restrictive. Inflation is running a bit above 2%, as I mentioned, even excluding tariff effects. The labor market's solid, historically low unemployment. Financial conditions are accommodative, and the economy is not performing as though restrictive policy were holding it back inappropriately. So it seems to me and to almost the whole committee that the economy is not performing as though restrictive policy is holding it back inappropriately, and modestly restrictive policy seems appropriate. All that said, there's also downside risk to the labor market. In coming months, we'll receive a good amount of data that will help inform our assessment of the balance of risks and the appropriate setting of the federal funds rate.
So just to follow up, by coming months, does that include the possibility you'll be getting essentially 2 rounds of jobs and inflation data between now and the September meeting? Is that potentially adequate to make a decision to lower rates at that point?
So you're right. We do have, this is an intermeeting period when we'll get 2 full rounds of employment and inflation data before the time of the September meeting. We have made no decisions about September. We don't do that in advance. We'll be taking that information into consideration and all the other information we get as we make our decision at the September meeting.
Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You took out the word or the notion that uncertainty has diminished from this statement. Does that mean uncertainty has increased? And I'm just wondering, the administration has struck several deals with large trading partners where it seems like we now know what the rate is going to be. Does knowing that rate add to your certainty to change policy, or do you need to wait to see the economic effects?
So essentially, the statement in our statement about uncertainty reflects what's gone on since the last meeting. So at the time of the last meeting, uncertainty had moved down a little bit, but it was more or less even this time. So we took out, had diminished because it didn't diminish further. So there's not really much in that. And then your second question is, say again?
There have been several deals that have been struck, and now we seem to have an idea what the tariff rates are going to be with some of our large trading partners. Does that not add to the kind of certainty you might need, or is it you're waiting for the economic effects to show themselves?
No, I think we're still, you're right, it's been a very dynamic time for these trade negotiations, and lots and lots of events in the intermeeting period, but we're still a ways away from seeing where things settle down. We are clearly getting more and more information, and I think at this point, people's estimates, our estimates, outside estimates of the likely, effective level of tariffs is not moving around that much at this point. But at the same time, there are many uncertainties left to resolve. So yes, we are learning more and more. It doesn't feel like we're very close to the end of that process, and that's not for us to judge. But it feels like there's much more to come, as well, looking ahead.
Neil.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Neil Irwin with Axios. This morning we got a GDP report in which final domestic private purchases decelerated, slowest pace since 22. There was a weakness in the interest-sensitive sectors and residential investment, commercial structures. Are those not signs that monetary policy is a little too restrictive right now, given current economic conditions?
So the GDP and PDFP numbers came in pretty much right where we expected them to come in. You got to look at the whole picture. So certainly, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, economic activity data, GDP, private domestic final purchases, which we think is a narrower but better signal for future, for where the economy is going, has come down to a little better than 1%, 1.2%, I think, in the case of GDP for the first half, whereas it was 2.5% last year. So that has certainly come down. But if you look at the labor market, what you see is, by many, many statistics, the labor market is kind of still in balance. It's things like quits, job openings, and let alone the unemployment rate. They're all by many measures, very similar to where they were a year ago. So you do not see weakening in the labor market. You do see a slowing in job creation, but also a slowing in the supply of workers. So you've got a labor market that's in balance, albeit partially because both demand and supply for workers is coming down at the same pace, and that's why the unemployment rate has remained roughly stable, which is why I said we do see downside risk in the labor market. I mean, our two mandate variables, right, are inflation and maximum employment, stable prices and maximum employment, not so much growth. So the labor market looks solid. Inflation is above target, and even if you look through the tariff effects, we think it's still a bit above target, and that's why our stance is where it is. But as I mentioned, downside risks to the labor market are certainly apparent.
So on labor, given the fluid labor supply situation, is there a number for this jobs report we get on Friday that would look to you like equilibrium job growth?
The main number you have to look at now is the unemployment rate, because it's true that the demand for workers in the form of, let's call it, just say payroll jobs, that number has come down, but so has the break-even number, kind of in tandem. So, as long as that puts the labor market in balance, the fact that it's getting into balance due to declines in both supply and demand, though, I think it is suggestive of downside risk. So we of course will be watching that carefully.
Thank you. Colby Smith with the New York Times. Two of your colleagues called for a quarter-point cut today, and I'm wondering what aspects of their argument were most compelling to you and how you're weighing their views against those on the committee who, as of the June forecast, were in the camp of the Fed holding interest rates steady for the remainder of the year. And just in terms of the June SEP in particular, is that still the best representation of where the core of the committee is?
So on the dissents, what you want from everybody, and also from a dissenter, is a clear explanation of what your thinking is and what are the arguments you're making, and we had that today. So I think basically this was quite a good meeting, all around the table, where people were thought carefully about this and put their positions out there. as I mentioned, the sort of the majority of the committee was of the view that inflation's a bit above target, maximum employment is at target. That calls for modestly restrictive, in my way of thinking, modestly restrictive stance of policy for now. But we had two dissenters who I think, you want that clear thinking and expression of your thinking, and we certainly had that today, I think all around the table. In terms of, you asked about the June SEP, I wouldn't, that you're right, that's what it says, and that may well, I couldn't point to it 6 weeks later as expressing people's thought. You really can't do that. We don't run an SEP, and I don't like to substitute in my own estimate of what the SEP might be. We don't have one. So I'll just say that, we haven't made any decisions about September. We'll be monitoring all the incoming data and asking ourselves whether the federal funds rate is in the right place.
And just on the point about policy being only modestly restrictive, does that mean that there's actually not much scope to reduce rates once the conditions for a cut are met, barring a significant weakening of the labor market?
So let me say, my own estimate is modestly restrictive, and there are a range of views of what the neutral rate is at this moment for our economy, and so others may say it's more restrictive or less restrictive even. We're going to be, at some point, when we return to moving toward a more neutral stance, we'll be making that judgment as we go. I don't think we have a preset course. It's not so mechanical as saying, we've derived with great confidence the neutral rate and that is our destination, because really we understand that no one actually knows what the neutral rate is. We know it by its works, and that will be how the way the economy reacts over time to, slightly looser policy.
Nick Timmeros, The Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, my question is about what have you learned over the last few months about the inflation generating and price pass-through process? And just to drill down, the June CPI report showed evidence of tariff-induced goods inflation. Now, the tariff landscape is only starting to be settled with some of these more recent deals. Given the lags between when tariffs are announced and when they show up in goods prices, is 2 months a long enough horizon to evaluate the impact and be confident that tariffs aren't impacting the broader inflation process?
I think you have to think of this as still quite early days. And so I think what we're seeing now is substantial amounts of tariff revenue being collected on the order of $30 billion a month, which is substantially higher than before. And the evidence seems to be mostly not paid only to a small extent through exporters lowering their price, and companies or retailers, sort of people who are upstream, institutions that are upstream from the consumer, are paying most of this for now. Consumers it's starting to show up in consumer prices, as you know, in the June report. We expect to see more of that. And we know from surveys that companies feel that they have every intention of putting this through to the consumer, but the truth is they may not be able to in many cases. So I think we're just going to have to watch and learn empirically how much of this and over what period of time. I think we've learned that the process will probably be slower than expected at the beginning, but we never expected it to be fast. We think we have a long way to go to really understand exactly how it will be. So that's how we're thinking of it right now.
So if I could follow up, is the reticence to look through core goods inflation being driven by the judgment that during the pandemic expectations proved more adaptive than anyone at the Fed expected? Is it being driven by uncertainty over how restrictive policy is?
You could argue we are a bit looking through goods inflation by not raising rates. We haven't reacted to new inflation, but I mean I wouldn't insist upon that. But I don't think I think the base case, as I said, a reasonable base case is that these are one-time price effects. Of course, in the end, there will not be. This will not turn out to be inflation, because we'll make sure that it's not. We will, through our tools, make sure that this does not move from being a one-time price increase to serious inflation. We want to do that efficiently, though, and that means we want to do it. If you move too soon, you wind up maybe not getting inflation all the way fixed, and you have to come back. That's inefficient. If you move too late, you might do unnecessary damage to the labor market. So there won't be, in the end, a big inflationary problem. What we're trying to do is accomplish that in a way that is efficient. But in the end, there should be no doubt that we will do what we need to do to keep inflation under control. Ideally, we do it efficiently.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Television and Radio. The one big bill, leaving aside the adjectives, do you expect it to add stimulus to the economy in 2026? And would that be an argument for remaining on hold or cutting back on the number of rate cuts you would expect for next year?
So, of course, let me just ritual disclaimer that we don't express any judgments or anything like that on fiscal legislation or other legislation for that matter. But I would say when you think that, the biggest part of the bill was making permanent existing law on taxes, I don't think we see it as particularly stimulative. There should be some stimulative effect, but it shouldn't be significant over the next couple of years.
And to follow up, what do you, well, I don't want to put this in terms of you and the president, so let me ask it this way. Do you have concerns about the cost to the government of keeping rates elevated for longer in terms of interest rate charges?
Yeah, no, that's, we have a mandate, and that's maximum employment and price stability. And it is, it's not something we do to consider the cost to the government of our rate changes. We have to be able to look at the goal variables Congress has given us, use the tools they've given us to achieve those goals, and that's what we do. We don't consider the fiscal needs of the federal government. No advanced economy central bank does that, and it wouldn't be good for, if we did do that, it would be good neither for our credibility nor for the credibility of U.S. fiscal policy. So it's just not something we take into consideration.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. When it comes to the renovations of the Federal Reserve's headquarters that the administration has been looking into, do you see their interest in that issue as being directly tied to the president's push to get you to lower interest rates?
Not for me to say. I will say we had a nice visit with the president. It was an honor to host him. It's not something that happens very often at the Federal Reserve to have the president come over, let alone to visit a building. But it was a good visit.
Are there any aspects of the project that they've raised that you see as making you reconsider any aspects of the project?
So, this project was hatched and conceived almost a decade ago now, and we went through the very long process of clearing it through historic preservation at the National Capital Planning Commission, and a lot of back and forth there. It was very constructive. We started out to do the work, and we're very well along on that work, and I was quite pleased to have the president say multiple times that what he really wanted to see was us getting this construction completed as soon as possible. That is our focus, and that's what we're going to do.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Andrew Ackerman with the Washington Post. What message do you take from the fact that inflation hit 2.1% last September and has bounced higher since? Why do you think financial conditions are restrictive and a neutral rate's below 4% when inflation has stopped falling for almost a year?
So inflation, when you talk about these 12-month inflation measures, you're always battling residual seasonality. So we'll have, for example, 2 months of high inflation sometimes early in the year, and then inflation turns lower, and a lot of that may just be an artifact. So that's why we look at the 12-month numbers. I think inflation is most of the way back to 2%. There are things like the catch-up inflation. So, for example, all the insurance costs that they're only now going through inflation, but they actually reflect inflationary pressures from 2-3 years ago. So that's got to go through. In addition, now we have 3 or 4 tenths of inflation in core inflation from tariffs. So, and we can't really separate that out. We're not going to have a separate kind of inflation that isn't the tariffs. We're always going to be dealing with all of inflation. But the composition, as I mentioned, has really changed. And if you go back to the last couple of years, it was all about services inflation, which was being very sticky. Now services inflation is coming down nicely. Goods inflation was well behaved before, and now goods inflation is going up. So the story has really changed. That's partially because of tariffs. It's also partially because we had restrictive policy in place, and we've seen that the result of that gradually work its way through the services economy.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to ask is, are you comfortable that BLS can continue performing their mission effectively if they take an 8% reduction in headcount and authorized spending as the administration has proposed?
I'm not going to comment on the administration's proposal. I do think, as I've said, I think that we're getting the data that we need to do our jobs, and I think it's really important that good data helps not just the Fed, it helps the government, but it also helps the private sector. People in the economy, they use this data a lot too, so it's quite important for our economy and certainly for the Fed's work and other government agencies' work that we continue to get better at data. That's what we've been doing for 100 years. We've been getting better and better and better. It's very hard to accurately capture in real time the output of a $20+ trillion economy. And the United States has been a leader in that for 100 years, and we really need to continue that, in my view.
Edward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Edward Lawrence from Fox Business. How concerned are you with the data that we're coming in, showing no significant upward trend in inflation over the past 6 months, that the wait-and-see approach for inflation is actually giving companies cover to raise prices?
How concerned am I that say that again?
The wait-and-see approach is giving...
The wait-and-see approach, what do you mean by that?
For cutting rates. You're waiting to see if the tariffs will affect inflation. So it's a wait-and-see approach.
Well, so that's where policy's restrictive. When we start cutting, it'll go toward neutral.
Okay. This delay, though, where you're saying there's a one-time price increase for tariffs, which possibly could lead into bigger inflation or more inflation. Is that giving companies cover, though, to raise prices?
Well, what may be giving, it's not our policy stance, what may be giving some companies will certainly be taking advantage of the fact of the tariffs and all of the discussion of how they're going to, companies will raise prices when and as they can. And so you saw it famously in the first administration of President Trump during those tariffs. Washing machines were tariffed, but dryers weren't. But what do you know? The price of dryers went up too, just like washing machines. So companies will often just they'll cross the street in a group, if you know what I mean. That'll happen. We don't see a lot of that. I mean, what we see now is basically the very beginnings of whatever the effects turn out to be on goods inflation. And I'll say again, they may be less than people estimate or more than people estimate. They're not going to be zero. Consumers will pay some of this. Businesses will pay some of this. Retailers will pay some of this. But we're just going to have to see it through.
And just to follow, if I could, some additional tariffs have been in place since February, and things really haven't broken yet with the economy. So how do you justify to somebody who's looking for a house, who's facing a 7% mortgage and maybe can't afford those rates? How do you justify that?
Well, so the housing is a special case, right? We don't set mortgage rates at the Fed, right? We set an overnight rate, and the rates that go into mortgages are longer term rates, like Treasury rates. It might be 30-year rates, it might be shorter than that, but it's not the overnight Fed's rate. It's not that we don't have any effect. We do have an effect, but we're not the main effect. There are other things going on in the housing sector, and one of those is just there's kind of a long-term housing shortage that we have. We haven't built enough housing. This is not something the Fed can help with, but then that'll be the case even after things normalize. So I think the best thing that we can do for housing is to have 2% inflation and maximum employment, and that's what we can contribute to housing. There are lots of other jobs to do for the private sector and Congress, but that's what we're trying to get to. I mean, we've made a lot of progress toward that. We have a very good labor market right now. Inflation, we were very close to 2%. We're seeing some goods inflation move us away, but so far not very far away.
Chris.
Hi, Chair Powell. Thank you. Well, can you give us a little more about what kind of economic data does the Fed need to see before you'll be ready to cut? I mean, do you need inflation back nearly to target? Are there other things in the pricing that you look for? Do you need to see weakening in the job market? What kind of things are you looking for?
I mean, ultimately, it could be any of those things, right? But you know, if you saw that the risks to the two goals were moving into balance, if they were fully in balance, that would imply that you should move toward a more neutral stance of policy. This is the special situation we're in, which is we have two-sided risk to both of our goals. When we paused, inflation was above target and the labor market was pretty good. So you know, that was a time when policy was restrictive when we paused. And to be restrictive is to be supporting a return to our inflation target, right? So as the two targets get back into balance, you would think you'd move in a way closer to neutral, and that the next steps that we take are likely to be in that direction. What will it take? You know, it'll be the totality of the evidence. As I mentioned, there's quite a lot of data coming in, which before the next meeting, will it be dispositive of that? You know, it's really hard to say. We don't make those decisions right now, so we'll have to see.
Well, I guess just in terms of inflation, though, for example, like some people would point to if it remains only in goods and it doesn't bleed over to services, then maybe that's evidence that the tariff effect is going to be a temporary one-time thing. Is that kind of thing affect your thinking, or do you just need to see the number come down
I think
closer to 2?
We'll look at everything. You know, it's, as I mentioned, you know, a pretty reasonable base case is that this will be a one-time price increase. And in the end, we'll make sure that that's the case. We're just trying to do that efficiently. And efficiently means getting the timing right, so we don't again, if we cut rates too soon, maybe we didn't finish the job with inflation. History is dotted with examples of that. If you cut too late, then maybe you're doing unnecessary damage to the labor market. So we're trying to get that timing right, and that's effectively what we're doing.
Claire. Claire Jones, Financial Times. Just a question on the dollar. We've seen it decline quite heavily this year. I was wondering if there's been any discussion about that at the meetings and to what degree that may be complicating your attempts to get inflation back to target. Thank you.
So this goes back to the division of labor between the Fed and the Treasury, as you I'm sure know, and you know the Treasury only speaks to the dollar. It's not something that's been a topic of you know, major discussion at all at the Fed. I won't say it doesn't come up. If the transcripts, when they come out in a few years, they'll probably reflect some mentions of the dollar, but it would never be a major focus.
And just to follow on, if I may, to Andrew's question, I think the amount of imputed data in CPI now is up to 35%. I mean, is there any discussion of that as well? Is there any consideration of looking at alternative measures, data scraping and so on, in order to just ensure you've got a good read on what's happening to prices in the U.S. economy? Thank you.
You know, we're monitoring the situation. We do, of course, I mean, as you know, during the pandemic, we looked at a whole lot of new kinds of data. People are looking at big data sets that you can get from all sorts of places, and we do all of that. But at the same, we really need the government data. Really is the gold standard in data, and we need it to be, you know, to be good and be able to rely on it. And we're not going to be able to substitute for that. But you know, if we have to make do with what we have. But I certainly hope that we get what we need.
Jay O'Brien.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Jay O'Brien, ABC News. President Trump has obviously invoked your name a lot. He has personally pressured you. Are you concerned the way that conduct might impact the Fed's independence going forward?
I'll just say that, so I think that having an independent central bank has been an institutional arrangement that has served the public well. And as long as it serves the public well, it should continue and be respected. If it didn't serve the public well, then it wouldn't be something that we should just automatically defend. But what it gives us, and other central banks, what it gives you is the ability to make these very challenging decisions that in ways that are focused on the data and the evolving outlook, the balance of risks, and all the things we talk about, and not political factors. And so governments all over the advanced economy world have chosen to put a little bit of distance between direct political control of those decisions and the decision makers. So if you were not to have that, there would be a great temptation, of course, to use interest rates to affect elections, for example. And that's something that we don't want to do. So I think that's pretty widely understood. Certainly it is in Congress. And I think it's very important. I'll just say that.
Maria Eloisa.
Afternoon, Chair Powell. Maria Luisa Capurro from Bloomberg News. You mentioned a slowdown in consumer spending, and I wanted to see if you could walk us through what was the discussion with the committee around that. We've seen delinquency rates rising for upper-income households. How do you see that evolving in the next few months, and how much of a vulnerability that is for the economy going forward?
Consumer spending had been very, very strong for the last couple of years, and had repeatedly, forecasters, not just us, had been forecasting it would slow down, and now maybe it finally has. So I would say, if you talk to credit card companies, for example, they will tell you that the consumer's in solid shape and that spending is at a healthy level. It's not growing rapidly, but it's at a healthy level. And delinquencies are not a problem. You mentioned high-end delinquencies. I don't know what to make of that. I read the same thing. But so generally, if you look at the banks, and when the banks talk about in their earnings calls, the performance of credit has been good. So essentially, you have a consumer that's in good shape and is spending, not at a rapid rate, but it's true. And it was, again, right in line with what we expected. The GDP data that we got this week. And I think it's still a little bit difficult to interpret because you have these massive swings in net exports, which may also be affecting, some of that can affect consumer spending as well. Look, it's one of the data points that we pay most careful attention to, and there's no question that it's slowed. And we're watching it closely, but we also watch the labor market and the performance of inflation. Those are our two variables that we're assigned to maximize.
And just to follow up on what my colleagues were asking about this sense, Governor Waller said that the labor market is on edge, and he was pointing to weaknesses on the private sector. I was wondering, you've said that the main number to look at is the unemployment number overall, but what was the discussion about the state of the private jobs market?
So I'm not going to talk about any individual's, any individual's comments. I wouldn't do that. But I think what we know is that private sector job creation, certainly in the last report, we'll see on Friday, but had come down a bit. And if you take the QCEW adjustment seriously, it may be even lower, maybe close to zero. But the unemployment rate was still low. So what that's telling you is that demand for workers is slowing, but so is the supply. So it's in balance, oddly enough. You've got a very low unemployment rate, and it's kind of been there for a year as job creation has moved down. But also we know that, because of immigration policy, really, the flow into our labor force is just a great deal slower. And those two things have slowed more or less in tandem. If you look at things like I mentioned, quits, look at wages. Wages are gradually cooling. Look at vacancies to unemployment. Those things have been pretty stable they haven't really moved a lot in a full year. So I think if you take the totality of the labor market data, you've got a solid labor market. But I think you have to see that there are downside risks. You don't see weakening in the labor market, but I think you've got downside risks in a world where unemployment's being held down because both demand and supply are declining. I think it's worth paying close attention to it, and we are.
Nancy.
Hi, Chair Powell. Nancy Marshall-Genzer with Marketplace. One more question on the lack of unanimity in today's decision, the two dissents. Was there talk during the meeting? I know you're not going to talk about exactly what individuals said, but in general, was there talk during the meeting of cutting rates, and what was the case against that at the meeting?
Sure. So, we have an economic go-around where people talk about the economy, and then that's yesterday, and then today we have a monetary policy go-around. All the way around the table, everyone gives their views. So the discussion around policy was, the majority view was still what it has been, which is that inflation's running above target, maximum employment is right at target. That means policy should be a little bit restrictive, somewhat restrictive, because we want inflation to move all the way back to its target. So that's where people have been and still are. Two of our members felt that the time had come to cut, and that they, for the reasons that they're going to express. I won't tell you the reasons. They'll issue some kind of a thing in the next day or so. But that's the story, and I would say, well argued, very thoughtfully argued all around the table, good arguments, and it's a situation where, unusual situation. The economy is in good shape, but it's an unusual situation where you have risks to both your employment mandate and your inflation mandate. That's the nature of a supply shock. And it's probably not surprising that there would be differences and different perspectives on that, as well as different views of where the neutral rate is, so that different views of how tight policy is. So we have those. I will say what you hope is that people, explain their positions very thoughtfully and clearly, and we absolutely had that today, all the way around the table. I would call it one of the better meetings I can recall from that standpoint.
And you've said you're waiting to be confident inflation is heading toward your 2% target before you start cutting rates. When you do get that confidence, would you be in favor of lowering rates right away?
It's not quite the way I would put it. I said that's why we think policy should be restrictive, is because inflation is above target. When we have risks to both goals, one of them is farther away from goal than the other, and that's inflation. Maximum employment's at goal. So that means policy should be tight, because tight policy is what brings inflation down. If you came to the view that the risks to the two were more in balance, that would imply that policy shouldn't be restrictive. It should be more neutral, more a neutral stance, and that would be somewhat lower than where we are now. No one knows exactly where that is. So that's the framework I think I'd be taking, and we'll just have to see. We're going to be obviously looking at a lot of data in the next cycle. It is one of the cycles where we have 2 employment and 2 inflation reports, and we'll see where that takes us.
Jeff Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking the question. Jeff Cox from CNBC.com. A metric that you like to cite a lot is the final sales to private domestic purchasers. That was down to a 1.2% gain in second quarter from 1.9% in Q1, suggesting that there's some softening in underlying demand. I just wonder if you look at that and you combine that with some of the housing numbers, the weakness that you acknowledged at the top of your remarks, that the housing market is in fact weak, and the inflation numbers from GDP today came down to 2.1% for headline, 2.5% for core. I'm wondering how much more movement you would need to see from these data points before you would be comfortable with cutting in, say, September.
It's going to be the total. Hard to answer that specifically. PDFP, I think, for the first half, private domestic final purchases, or final sales, as people call it, was 1.6 on the first half. GDP, I believe, was 1.2%. That's the whole half. You mentioned the quarters. So those are slower, but GDP is bumpy quarter to quarter, half to half, and often gets revised, after the fact. The labor market data we still think is, continue to think is the best data we have on the economy, and that shows a 4.1% unemployment rate. It shows wages, still at a healthy level, but moving ever closer to what we would regard as long-run sustainable, consistent with longer-run productivity and 2% inflation. So the labor market is actually still quite solid. Inflation is above target, even ignoring tariffs. It's a little bit above target, and tariffs. So we're watching all of that, And again, trying to do the right thing in what is a challenging situation because you're being pulled in two directions, and you have to decide which of those to go in. And actually, at some point, if they're sort of equally at risk, then you really want to be at a neutral policy stance, which we're not right now.
So it'd be safe to say that if the data kind of stays in line with where it is right now, that you wouldn't be comfortable with cutting in September?
I'm not going to say that. No, I just think we're going to need to see the data, and it can go in many different directions. The inflation data and the employment data, and we're going to make a judgment based on all of the data and based on that balance of risks analysis that I mentioned.
Thank you.
Greg, Rob, for the last question.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Greg Robb from MarketWatch. The Treasury Secretary has said recently that it would be confusing for the markets if you stayed on as a governor after your term as chair ends. And I was wondering if you had any update for us on a decision on that front.
Sorry, I do not have any update for you. Thanks very much, everyone.
Hello 啊，大家好啊，歡迎嚟到天下知多啲，我係 Dennis， 好多謝咁多位啊 ，Thank you very much for subscribing. Thank you very much for commenting. I'm Dennis. I'm a Hong Konger for Trump. I'm a MAGA. Since 1918, I think. Yeah, since 1918. No, yeah, since 2018, I'm a MAGA. Okay, and I will continue to support President Trump. So far, he is heading in the right direction and helping America great again. And also, even you know, if people who knows Robert Kennedy Jr., he has a character. He has a character. He likes something or he doesn't like something. You can see at his face. Okay, but let me go back to Cantonese because this is a Cantonese channel, Hong Konger for Trump, and so I appreciate everyone's subscribe. Please follow me. I will update all this information as much as possible. Now I have to tell all my Hong Kongers friends to trust Trump. Okay, thank you. 好多謝大家，亦都好感激大家能夠可以留言啊！希望咧我呢個 channel 亦都可以多啲香港人入嚟睇啦。因為主要我都係想俾啲點解我有字幕咧？我仲未能夠可以搞得到比較好嘅字幕。我唔，因為呢個唔係我正職啊，就唔可以花好多時間去搞個字幕咯，搞唔掂啊！因為好多嗰啲 translation 咧都係要經Google 啊嗰啲咁嘅 engine 咧。反而仲慢過喺 YouTube 出嚟嗰個字幕啊，所以咧我就結果就冇用到我自己整咗嗰個，因為跳嚟跳去，同埋我部機又唔係啲好新嘅機咧，本來係可以咧喺我部機入邊咧就藏咗個軟件，跟住咧佢就直接入我個機嘅軟件，跟住再 run 完之後就出一套字幕出嚟嘅。咁呢套字幕咧do it in English. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Please subscribe. I will try my best. Because I have many friends who are more comfortable with the Cantonese, and I'm in Chinese community. I want to build my Chinese community, Hong Konger community. I'm sorry, Hong Konger community. Yeah. I want to build my Hong Kong community, and I will even share some books in Chinese, so I cannot. But I appreciate. please subscribe and every day I will try to get information out and thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry. I have to please my Hong Kong audience. 因為好難咯，因為I cannot please everyone. Thank you, I appreciate. Yeah. 嗰個睇下先，睇下講咗邊度先頭先啦，咁就幾樣嘢啦。第一，阿 Trump 就喺3個鐘頭之內，有時呢個總統你真係頂佢唔順嘅我今朝即係好似我哋呢啲咧 YouTuber 啦，根本就唔使驚冇料出啦。哇！我睇完嗰個第一個VA 嗰個跟住咧哇又有個VA 個 signature 嗰個，睇完之後哇又有一個啦呢個。其實我幾中意Robert Kennedy Jr. 嗰個嘅。咁 Robert Kennedy Jr. 咧就係即係make America healthy again 啦。咁我哋好多時其實尤其是我哋香港人咧，我哋都知道嘅我哋香港人咧食味嘅嘢，唔係死味嘅。我哋香港人都知道嘅好多香港大陸歐洲日本台灣禁嗰啲食物咧，反而美國你仲可以食到嘅。所以咁亦都咧好多YouTube 好多Instagram 都已經有啲人咧喺度舉報緊好多唔同嘅食品咧入邊咧都有啲第二啲國家都唔容許嘅咁我哋有啲嘢係呢度食澳洲冇嘅，所以咧好多呢啲我哋想即係好奇怪咯。咁而家好彩咯，而阿 Trump 咧亦都好 free 俾Robert Kennedy Jr. 去做佢要做嘅嘢咯。咁我覺得係非常之好嘅，咁非常之好Hong Kong for Trump 等我打個字俾佢先因為咧佢可能都唔係好知嘅等個 hashtag 睇下會唔會好啲。2019應該2019啦anti-vaccine， 我哋好多都係 anti-vaccine 㗎，我自己都係我自己都係 anti-vaccine 友嚟㗎嘛咁咧I'm sorry the technology is not up to date yet there's no Cantonese dupe to English they have other language but except Cantonese this eventually Google will improve. Google is working on the dubbing language, and I think they have even Vietnamese. They can do dubbing English into Vietnamese, but they don't have anything from Cantonese into English. So well, eventually we have to wait. Thank you. Yeah. 咁咧，我哋就呢個簽完之後，即係幫咗好多 veteran 啦。我哋其實係我哋拜登嗰陣時，真係亦都好多veteran。即係我哋嗰陣時 Trump rally 嗰陣時咧，我哋出過嚟好多 Trump 嗰啲 rally， 跟住之後咧，我哋有接觸好多 veteran。咁佢哋都有同我哋反映好多嘅情形。Thank you very much。跟住咧，跟住之後嗰個 make American health again 啦又係一個都係緊要啦。好等我陣咁咧， This will be a next topic 啊，呢個 next topic 嚟嘅。Maybe you guys don't know tell that to the vaccine injured. Little late to warn the dead. Yeah, I know. So sad. I know it's very sad. The deep state is dying. I'll translate into English 個 deep state 係 dying 緊嘅，好多而家好多已經發生緊嘅嘢啦，咁好多發生緊 behind the scene 嘅好多嘢發生緊，但係咧好多嘢已經蒲咗面嘅，譬如話咧 Nancy Pelosi 呢個啦，跟住咧有個好消息話俾大家知添啊 ，OK， let me bring it out。得OK, thank you, Fabian. See you next time. 呢個咧 not warning for California governor 點解點解我放阿 Simpson 個妹喺度 ？Simpson 個呢個係 Lisa Simpson。如果應該香港人都知佢係邊個嘅。佢哋嗰陣時咧，即係呢個何錦麗啦，大家識啦咁咧何錦麗嗰陣時佢走咗出嚟準備選總統嗰陣時咧，就好多嗰啲即係嗰啲我都唔知點樣形容嗰啲人啦，好迷信啦，或者叫做好迷信嗰啲人咧，就會話咦，因為咧阿 Trump 贏咗總統之後咧 ，Simpson 曾經有一幕咧，就阿 Trump 喺 escalator 落嚟嗰一幕咧，咁之就嗰個咧就做咗佢個 prediction 啊 ，Simpson prediction Simpson prediction， 跟住之後咧，跟住到何錦麗出嚟選啦總統嗰陣時咧，佢哋又攞 Simpson 呢套 Lisa Simpson 呢套衫，你睇，咦，哇唔係咁巧嘛咁着埋一樣款喎，死啦！會唔會何錦麗會贏咧？會唔會Simpson 嗰班又俾佢估中咗咧？因為咧911佢哋又講過跟住好多嘢佢哋都 predict 過嘅，咁會呢個 predict 有中咧咁樣有時啲嘢咧就唔好咁迷信，好多嘢咧都係有咁啱就得咁巧嘅嘢，就千祈唔好迷信咯咁即係呢個好消息啦。就佢唔會出嚟選啦 ，OK？Not running for California governor 啦 ，good it's a great news。咁樣因為咧如果出嚟選都嘥錢啦，總之不過佢出嚟選都輸眼嘅，所以佢哋民主黨已經唔要佢佢喺度講話俾人知 ，should just slip away in the office。係即係 people slip their way until you 40 after 40你又冇得㗎啦嘛，大佬係嘛 ？After 40 you cannot slip your way up 㗎啦，冇啦，佢唔可以再瞓上去，佢係靠瞓上去，我哋叫做佢已經冇得再瞓上去個 level 啦。咁而家諗住嗰陣時拜登已經懵啦嘛，懵到一個地步就即係冇頂唔順啦。咁民主黨就焗住就擁咗何錦麗出嚟，一擁咗出嚟衰埋咁而家成個民主黨其實怪罪於佢咧，應該因為仲爭人好多錢有個選舉基金即係選舉嗰個corruption。咁而家第一樣嘢啦，就去game over 啦，俾佢跟住之後咧，仲有就係要睇。OK 啱啊，就要睇呢個啦。呢個亦都係其中 另外一個 indication 嚟嘅。而家呢個咧就係、好似今日啦，就 Pelosi ad 整個 Pelosi ad 俾大家睇下。咁啊 Pelosi ad 咁咧就叫做普魯西法案，俾大家睇啦。普魯西法案咁啊，而家喺度討論緊啦，喺度有個爭議啦。普魯西法案究竟呢個普魯西法案咧係能夠通過咧？咁頭先咧 Trump 咧都有提過少少嘅等可唔可以叫做普魯西法案布魯西普魯西我都唔知普魯士係普魯士普魯西係咪呢個咧？大家話俾我知係咪中文係咪咁寫啦？普魯西法案。咁咧就呢個 Nancy Pelosi 佢就已經佢都應該已經收皮㗎啦，叫做死唔斷氣啊，就仍然需要少少自我存在感啊咁樣嗰啲咯。咁而家好開心啦，佢就俾佢刷到存在感啦，成個標都用佢個名。呢個標成個標都係用佢個名啊！你話真係死唔死？真係威啦歷史奧巴馬 care 嗰陣時有個奧巴馬 care 出嚟，而家整個普魯西法案出嚟夠晒威啊！跟住咧，因為咧點解咧？因為佢係出咗名咧 inside trading 內幕消息，跟住去炒股票，跟住賺一筆啦。咁而家佢哋咧就想唔俾所有嘅呢啲咁嘅 official 啦，咁就唔想佢哋會有 senator，OK？呢個 senator 就喺 Republican 同埋 Mark Alford 呢個 congressman 咁一齊咧就整呢個 bill 嘅。呢個 bill 咧就係因為 Nancy Pelosi Nancy Pelosi 咧佢就用佢老公就係喺炒股票咧，就用佢老婆啲嗰啲叫做嗰啲入邊啲資料啦，叫做 inside trade， 中文叫乜嘢？冇晒啲中國人喺度幫我打字俾我睇inside trade 係咁好得意嘅。咁 inside trade 咧，跟住咧而家咧嗰邊咧民主黨嗰邊咧就想咧就叫做 honest act。民主黨睇先佢哋而家咧就想叫做 honest act， 就唔想叫 Pelosi act， 係嘛？而家開始講喺個 committee 入邊咧，喺個委員會入邊咧已經過咗㗎啦，已經過咗話可以去寫呢條法案出嚟啦。OK， 咁你出咗佢之後咧，其實你兩邊都要寫㗎啦，有國會呢啲，你國會嗰邊又要寫，你嗰個眾議會同參議會都要寫㗎啦。寫一條法案出嚟咯，我唔知邊個會寫先啦。咁佢哋入邊仲喺度傾緊嘅。咁咧佢哋咧就話好啊，你咪寫咯，不過要改做 honest act， 同埋呢個 ban 咧要 ban 埋 president and vice president。啲人諗，咦係好似好 make sense， 好似好 make sense。民主黨嘅思維咧就一定會覺得好 make sense。其實因為咧，點解總統同副總統咧，我自己認為啦，都係應該要嘅。但係唔好唔記得，總統同副總統有 term limit，Congress 係冇 term limit，OK？所以我哋咧，即係要有一個 term limit，我等佢打出嚟先。最主要咧。即係其中一樣嘢，即係要 所有嘅都要有啲咁嘅 term limit，唔係淨係咧唔係一齊，即係而家係好多時就係拗數啊，政治 politics is talk 呢個就係政治拗數噶啦，你要呢啲，我要呢啲，我哋就咁咪喺度糾纏咯好啊，叫個 honest act 好啊 extend but Congress 有 term limit，OK 放埋入去咁咪公平啊，咁即係其實係政治都係咁嘅啫嘛，你出一啲嘢出嚟跟住拗我呢度有寫my opinion，OK 呢度我有 ask Grok about in my opinion the bill extend to President and Vice President if Congress has term limit 咯 ，what do you think 咁呢個咧就係 Grok 嘅 response 啦，其實好長啊佢個 response咁點樣要 term limit 嗰啲，其實因為其實喺個憲法入邊㗎，唔係咁容易㗎。咁但係咧就可以借住呢樣嘢，睇下可唔可以借住呢個嚟去搞啫嘛。如果搞得到，梗係好啦；搞唔到都冇辦法嘅呢個即係最緊要就係我哋都係最主要都係因為我哋想有個公平啊嘛。哇你哋全部製造法律嘅整 regulation 嗰班人，跟住咧你搞啲 regulation， 跟住有啲乜嘢改善啊，你就知道晒啦所以係非常之唔公平咯。咁但係咧都會呢個唔係咁容易嘅，呢個睇下可唔可以上翻去放翻我嗰個 question 喺上邊咧。咁有啲人睇英文嘅咧，唔識中文，唔知我有噏乜咧，即係大約知道我噏乜咯。呢個就係我大約個 question 咯。咁希望大家繼續支持我。今日好多謝咁我都好辛苦諗咗成日即係諗成日，因為今朝琴日出一個定係今朝出一個，琴日去，因為琴日要去機場咧就早整咗之後咧，咁嗰個 subscriber 咧就個數量咧就比較偏低咯。咁咧就即係我會好驚嘅因為咧其實我係好想喺呢度開始發展咁如果做得唔好咧，我對好似有種失落感咯，好容易會有。咁而家咧希望大家繼續幫手嚟分享支持啦。咁當然最重要一樣就係我準備真係我會去考慮去訪問一啲候選人㗎啦咁咧就今日咧都用咗好長嘅時間嚟睇呢個睇呢個 show 咯。咁記住啦，其實咧MAGA 放心，個 Deep State 已經死緊㗎啦。咁咧佢哋而家咧就喺度糾纏緊，就一味喺度。你睇留言都見到㗎，個個都喺度班民主黨嗰啲咧，個個都喺度 Epstein file 咁樣啊嘛。其實how about Obama Gate 就係咁咯。我哋而家就係佢哋就係咁做啫嘛。呢個我琴日有講少少嘅。呢個其實已經係開始緊嘅一個內戰嚟嘅。佢嗰啲人咧已經係做緊呢樣嘢。仲有一個咧就係你見佢哋喺度一味想控制住，尤其是控制住啲選票。咁結果而家咧，你睇開始好彩，即係我哋一定要 support ICE 因為咧唯有 support ICE 將嗰啲非法嗰啲人咧全部趕走晒，我哋先至可以真真正正攞翻個我哋美國人嘅選舉嚟嘅，大佬我琴日講鬱文嗰度有講睇下睇唔睇翻啲碌屎先，不過掉晒抄講完係嘛我哋中國人，尤其是我哋中國人，我哋香港人唔係香港人，香港人孫中山先生講噶嘛 選舉罷免、創制覆揭嚇，我哋爭取緊就係呢啲嘢。但係而家美國佢哋用非法移民就將我哋呢啲嘢去剝奪緊嚇，我點能夠可以坐視不理咧？咁而家好啊，佢哋一路西九，跟住咧你知啦，而家咧就陣間出一條片俾大家睇嚇，寫埋嚇。Self-hate is a real thing, or he just put money over people。我唔知佢講乜啦。溫和仲有一套戲一睇呢條片係 NBC 拍㗎 ，OK？NBC NBC 係左媒嚟㗎，左媒都已經頂唔順你呢啲非法移民啊！呢個非法移民佢哋嗰陣時仲諗住喺度推睇即係想去話俾人知。指非法移民係好㗎，冇嘢㗎，幫你㗎嗰啲請大家頭先欣賞。
2 weeks ago, Guillermo Reyes was at a rally outside federal immigration court in San Francisco, where his attorneys argued the tattoo artist should remain out of ICE custody because he's lived in the U.S. since he was 6 years old. They contend Reyes is being unfairly targeted for deportation because of his activism. But he also has a criminal history, including a conviction for stabbing a rival gang member in 2013.
To be honest, according to the conversations that I've had with immigration officers, we're all criminals to them just because we weren't born here.
But you do have a record.
Yeah, but just like I do have a record as a juvenile.
The judge granted Reyes a temporary reprieve, but this past Sunday, he was back in custody, accused of several new crimes. Berkeley police say the bizarre string of incidents started here, when Guillermo Reyes called 911 to report a possible break-in. Officers arrived to find a broken window and found Reyes with a bloody hand. They took some information and left. 4 hours later, someone at this cafe called 911 for medical help.
Initially, I called in as a medical for a male breathing heavily, but now possibly a fentanyl overdose. Braids, no shirt, tattooed.
Police soon learned about a string of carjacking incidents. One happened here at this bakery, where the 3-year-old was in the backseat of a car, but Reyes was unable to get away because he didn't have the keys. And here at this gas station, where the 70-year-old victim was able to douse Reyes with gasoline before she was knocked down. And then down the block, where a big rig Reyes was driving stalled before he could get away.
Well, we got one detained here, and Narcan was deployed.
In the end, Reyes was taken into custody.
This只係thousands case, one of the thousands case 係嘛？如果有人真係會 follow X 咧 ，X 嗰個 immigration ICE 嗰個 page 咧，佢就有好多資料，一路每日咧都會話俾人知嘅，都會有好多 update。今時今日咧已經唔會淨係專靠咧啲媒體嘅啦，或者靠我哋呢啲咁樣，我哋呢啲都係叫做幫多把，或者叫做就留我哋嘅感受、我哋嘅意見，我哋嘅就會放上去，即係希望多啲人知咁樣嘅啫，或者呢個就係我哋而家所做緊嘅嘢啦。我自己亦都我哋一定要唔好相信啲左媒啊，已經有就算華人圈咧。趙美心同嗰班咪方呢班人全部都喺度講大話。呢度嘅民主黨，我哋喺聖基廟 Valley 呢邊啲民主黨就喺度發謠言，就話俾人知 ICE 會嚟拉你嘅。如果嚟拉你嗰時，你要做啲乜嘢？ 係冇呢啲嘢發生緊嚇。如果你係非法嘅咁去拉你係天經地義喎，你因為你犯咗法啊嘛，你冇理由我 speeding， 即係我超速完之後跟住走去寫個阿 Sir 俾咗張 ticket， 你跟住去 court 度有冇搞錯？你就去 court 嗰度，你話阿 Sir 俾你罰單唔 make sense 噶嘛除非阿 Sir。除非你冇超速，你證實到你冇超速，跟住你話阿 Sir 屈你罰單，咁咪可以咯。而家就難啲㗎，因為我哋個個都有導航啊嘛，揸車嗰啲咧，嗰啲cam 咧，就根本就好難話屈你超速㗎啦你要超速，如果你就話阿 Sir 屈你超速，咁你咪攞嗰啲 camera 俾佢睇咯，係咪一樣得？所以而家係難好多。咁有啲嘢即係唔可以，即係當然。亦有唔好嘅警察啲 sheriff 尤其啲 sheriff 咧就最串嗰隻嘅，串個馬撚嘅嗰隻sheriff。啲 local police 即係咗啲 city police 好似 Manchester 呢啲 police、Alhambra 呢啲 police 一定係好過啲 sheriff 嘅。點解咧？sheriff 唔係呢個地區住㗎嘛，即係唔喺呢個地區，佢唔喺呢個地區，同埋即係變咗同我哋呢班人嗰個。local 咧係冇咁密切關係嗰種感覺咁 city police 係好過嗰啲 sheriff 嘅，係嘛？有啲 sheriff 又唔識你嘅，總之佢見嘢又快啲做完就算㗎啦嘛所以咧就即係呢個就係個制度問題咯。咁有時啲 city 唔中意我哋 Wolfsmith 呢度 city 唔中意有自己嘅police department， 因為 overhead 好重要俾好多錢，即係自己 own 一個 police department 真係唔簡單嘅。咁我哋 Wolfsmith 咪唔要咯，咪寧願俾錢俾sheriff 咯 ，county 咯，俾 county 咁佢哋嚟即係睇我哋治安咯。咁始終都係隔咗一層，即係冇咁親切咯。咁講啦，冇辦法㗎。你有時一分錢一分貨叫做你俾多啲稅咁咪又得咯 ，local 稅係嘛？即係一分錢一分貨咁咧今日咧仲有一個。即係你話 MAGA 同深層政府而家喺度鬥緊嘅 ，MAGA 其實係嗰陣時嘅茶黨即係可以同好多人講，嗰陣時茶黨俾奧巴馬打壓得好七彩嘅，啲人唔知即係啲人唔知道咧，就鬱文又唔肯聽我啲節目噶嘛，啲老人家我又唔可以要求咁多，啲老人家喂聽下啦咁樣，佢又唔知道我哋喺呢個政治裏邊嗰種 deep state。嗰種左右喺度搖擺嗰種情況咁我哋嗰陣時即係共和黨入邊有一班叫做茶黨咁嗰班人咧就比較保守，仲保守過有班我哋而家叫 Wino 嗰班嘅 Wino 嗰班其實都係 globalist 嚟嘅，都係全球主義者嚟嘅。咁我哋一班比較茶黨嗰班咧就係比較地道啲嘅，我哋中意即係。其實都揾到明嘅，所以我哋茶黨嗰班其實就係本土民主反共茶黨就係亦都係針對呢樣嘢。當然啦，你唔係話淨係講本土就唔講國際噶嘛因為而家呢個世界唔係咁 work 噶嘛，咁兩邊平衡噶嘛。咁阿Trump亦都喺度平衡緊，當佢平衡緊嗰陣時咧，都俾人插㗎因為有一班比較偏激嘅茶黨即係我一定只係關注本土嘅啫好似 Charlie Kirk 嗰啲 H1 visa 嗰啲都唔得，都要趕走去嗰啲咯，嗰啲係唔 make sense 嘅嗰啲嗰啲冇咗個宏觀咯Alex Jones 呢啲咧有時都好偏激嘅，即係點樣喺任何一個組織入邊咧都有一班人係比較偏激，咁呢班比較偏激嘅人咧我哋要點樣面對咧就啲人會話我偏激。我只係講事實出嚟，啲人就會話我偏激好似教會咁亂咁教聖經根本都唔係基督教，已經變咗係一個保羅教。我一講啲人就起槓㗎，因為其實呢樣係事實，因為佢哋個信仰就係佢哋嘅信仰嗰個安身立命嘅嗰一樣嘢。就算佢喺邊個宗教轉咗嚟基督教，佢帶埋啲迷信過嚟基督教， 好多人都，好今日我就有個朋友同佢分享咗，啲人移民嚟美國，你未移民嚟美國，你都已經知道美國有第二修正案㗎啦，呢度有槍㗎啦，你跟住你嚟到，哇！真係唔係幾好啊，唔係幾好。大佬人哋200幾年啊，嚇你啲人嚟咗，俾你當你60歲，都係60嚟，當你60歲嚇，你都係嚟咗50幾年啫嘛。跟住人哋乜250年嘅歷史，有槍嘅歷史，跟住你哋又喺度反槍啦，反對槍械啦，幾鬼無知啊，幾鬼卑鄙啊，叫做我哋咧美國呢個大熔爐已經好好啦，你去全世界，你睇有幾多個國家有咩 China Town 啊，有 Filipino Town 啊，有 J Town 啊，呢啲乜 town 乜 town 啊，有越南埠啊咁樣。你去全世界睇下，有邊個國家係可以有呢啲咁嘅唔同嘅細 community 啊？美國就係用 community 嚟做基礎噶嘛，但係啲民主黨唔係，民主黨借助呢班移民想去滿足佢哋嘅 agenda 啊嘛，啲人要分得清先得噶嘛。你入到嚟美國，人哋有入鄉隨俗啊，我哋中國人叫啊。你入到嚟美國，你咪跟美國嗰啲規矩咯。我今日同我朋友講，嗰啲人好多人都唔知，以前啲企台係冇人工嘅，個個去見餐館，即係我講緊 N 年前啦嚇，都我諗成60-70年前㗎啦，都好耐㗎，係冇人工嘅 N 年前啲企台嚇。咁咧餐館老細開咗，叫一班人嚟幫手，嗰班人咧就攞小費。邊個做得好咪邊個攞袋多啲小費咯，就唔係咧，唔係好似而家你見餐館咧係唐人餐館啦，係一班人一齊做一紮台嘅。嗰陣時唔係嘅，你入去呢幾張台嚟嘅，嗰個企台就係負責嗰個。呢個鬼佬餐館而家都仲係咁嘅，邊一個人就負責3張台嘅啫，個3張台都係佢噶啦，啊，佢嗰晚嘅嗰日嘅命運就喺晒嗰3張台嗰度噶啦，4張台你叻啲可能5張台，即係好 depends 啦。你做到幾多嘢，咁個經理就安排咯。啊，嗰啲人係全部係靠小費，老細可以變咗，老細可以好低嘅價錢去賣啲餐俾人，明唔明個道理啊？因為佢成本低咗啊嘛，但係後期已經冇啦，因為民主黨咯就係。其實唔係民主黨啊，共和黨啊，列根都有做呢啲咁嘅嘢。我都有時係嘛，啲人話列根好，列根都係叫做好啲咁嘅，佢都係民主黨底嚟噶嘛佢嚇。佢仲係藝人底嘅，係嘛？所以有時啲嘢嚇，有時啲嘢好似係 Trump 係雙生意佬底。佢喺度做，而家做咗政客啫嘛。呢啲咪要知咯，要諗咯，要去觀察咯。多謝，點解唔見咗個咧？聽到我講廣東話，哎呀，呢個係廣東話 channel。我呢度都有，下面都有寫廣東話。廣東話播放最新嘅美國新聞資訊，從政治經濟到文化以至全球大事啊，都係用廣東話同大家講嘅。咁啊，希望大家 Are you illegal alien to I'm legal 100% legal 嚇。咁咧 ，so I don't have to worry. I'm a citizen. I'm a US citizen. 咁咧，咁而家咧就其實有個咧，點解你頭先你喺下面嗰度咧，你會見到啊？呢本咧係我朋友喺香港帶俾我嘅，黐人數目20蚊，佢去咗書展啊，就買咗呢個蔡瀾啊，特價20蚊啊！咁啊，蔡瀾寫嘅，咁呢個好得意咯，見下佢好得意。跟住之後咧， 我睇哇嚇，即係揾佢呢個係好短嘅古仔嚟嘅，即係好似啲短語啊，我唔知有冇咩名字呢啲咁嘅，好短嘅啫，一頁嘅啫。咁啊，睇下可唔可以共同點好多嘢咯。咁佢又出咗，佢有一個叫做廢話，啲人成日話我講廢話，咁咦，原來佢都有講喎嚇，因為佢呢個廢話古仔個 title 叫廢話個古仔啦。咁啊，啲而家個有少少老花又近視啊！你坐飛嚇，咁有個朋友咧就問阿蔡瀾喎：你坐好多飛機啊，驚唔驚啊？蔡瀾話：我從來未驚過，但係有啲人咧坐唔到飛機啊，因為咧好畏高啊，同埋咧嗰個機艙嘅感覺咧好嗰個機艙裏邊嘅嗰個感覺咧就好驚，會架飛機咧會跌落嚟咁樣咯。咁啊，其實咧就根據啲統計咧，坐飛機比坐車仲安全嘅。佢話安全過100倍啊！坐飛機出事啊個或然率咧係110萬宗車禍裏邊先得1宗嚇。呢個就係阿蔡瀾佢呢啲統計啦。咁大嘅一架珍寶機啊嚇，咁喺啲唔穩定嘅氣流嗰度，都係搖下搖下，好似玩具咁搖下搖下啫嘛。咁但係都冇事喺度㗎。引擎4部引擎啊，冇咗個引擎都仍然可以降落嘅。你話呢部飛機有咩好驚咁穩陣嚇？飛行恐懼症咧係冇辦法解釋嘅，咁啊唔好睇少呢樣嘢喎。淨係喺美國咧就有飛行恐懼症咧，就令到啲航空公司咧就損失8億啊，每年損失8億美金啊。咁所以咧，美國啲航空公司咧好多時咧佢都會舉行一啲課程啦，想話俾人知坐飛機安全㗎，坐飛機安全啊咁樣咯。咁又靠咩深呼吸啊，又點樣食啲咩鎮靜劑啊咁，最後咧就會送一盒錄影帶俾佢，叫佢翻屋企睇。其實唔使驚，睇完你就咁搭飛機啊咁樣啦。香港就唔會有呢啲咁嘅嘢啦，係嘛？咁阿蔡瀾話：佢雖然咧就唔係啲咩博士，但絕對咧夠資格咧嚟開一兩班。咁咧，佢話賺少少錢都好啊，咁樣咯嚇。我嘅方法咧好簡單嘅啫，喺旅行之前咧就打通宵牌，打通宵牌打到唔夠瞓啦，跟住之後瞓唔即係打到通宵擺2晚，跟住咧上飛機就大覺瞓啦，咁啊冇事咯咁樣。咁啊仲有第二個方案喎，就係咧，如果你係怕咧，咁你就即係有啲人會驚到咧手震口乾嗰啲咁嘅嘢咧，咁佢叫佢揾佢最中意嘅朋友。揾佢最中意朋友，揾條女同你一齊。佢話咧，因為你唔衰得啊，因為你唔衰得，你坐喺架飛機度，你係死殘，你係焗住咁咧你就唔會驚喎咁樣。呢個第二個你搞笑仲有另外一種咧，就係買個好貴嘅機票，即係頭等艙，叫你去買頭等艙咁樣。跟住咧買完頭等艙之後咧，如果你驚你唔去咧，你會損失嗰個好大筆錢，所以你會因為唔想肉痛你就會焗住去坐咯。仲有第4種就係呢個冇得救啊，天生嘅因為基因問題所以咧因為基因問題所以咧就。因為基因問題咧，就會 冇得救噶啦，你係唔好坐飛機咯，坐船啦以後啊，咁咯4種啊，好得意咯，同大家分享下咯。咁你冇得咁樣啊，咁撚老撚肚啊，屌佢老味係嘛？啊，逼人哋逼人哋講中文啊 ！This is America, but this is a big melting pot of America. We have a big melting pot. We have different community. We have a lot of new immigrants. I'm helping a lot of new immigrants to get used to in living in America. So this is what the purpose of this channel also. Helping a lot of new immigrants to know how to be an American, because all immigrants eventually one day will become American. Okay, so don't talk shit. Okay, 咁啦。And I'm not Chinese. I'm Hong Konger. Fix it. No, fix it. 咁咧就好多謝大家今日嘅訂閱希望大家繼續去分享我嘅 channel， 留言點讚，多謝大家收睇。I see you next time, Fabian. MAGA Hong Kong for Trump. Bye bye.